476 AD, the date that supposedly ended an empire that ruled the known world for over 1,000 years. But what if it didn't? What if that single moment, when the last Western Roman emperor was deposed, never happened? Imagine standing in the ruins of the Roman Forum today, tourists shuffling past broken columns and crumbling arches. Now erase that image. Replace it with gleaming marble facades, bustling markets, and the unmistakable sound of Latin echoing through streets that never fell silent. This isn't fantasy. This is alternate history. And the implications will shake everything you thought you knew about the modern world. Because if Rome never fell, you wouldn't recognize civilization as we know it. The borders of nations, the religions that dominate continents, the very languages you speak, all of it would be radically, fundamentally different. Today, we're going to walk through that timeline. A timeline where the eternal city truly became eternal. And I promise you, by the end of this journey, you'll question whether Rome ever really fell at all. To understand what never happened, we must first understand what did. The Western Roman Empire didn't collapse overnight. It hemorrhaged slowly, bled out over centuries by 1,000 cuts. Barbarian invasions, economic collapse, political fragmentation, military defeats. By the year 376, Gothic refugees, fleeing the unstoppable Huns, crossed the Danube River seeking shelter within Roman borders. Rome couldn't control them, couldn't expel them, couldn't integrate them. This was the beginning of the end. Then came 395 AD. Emperor Theodosius I died, splitting the empire between his two utterly incompetent sons. East and West forever divided. The field armies were depleted. Civil wars had drained the treasury. And in 476, a Germanic chieftain named Odoacer simply walked in, deposed the teenage Emperor Romulus Augustulus, and the Western Roman Empire ceased to exist. But here's our divergence point. What if Theodosius I didn't die in 395? What if he lived another decade, long enough to install competent leadership and shore up the empire's crumbling foundations? What if Rome, instead of fragmenting, found a way to transform? In our alternate timeline, Theodosius survives his illness. He lives until 405 AD, giving him 10 crucial years to implement reforms that will save the empire. First, he restructures the military. Instead of resisting the Gothic migrations, he embraces them, but on Roman terms. The foederati system is expanded. Barbarian warriors are integrated into the legions, not as outsiders, but as citizens with land grants tied to military service. This creates a buffer zone of loyal, Romanized troops along the frontiers. Second, administrative reforms. The empire remains officially divided for governance, east and west, but united under a single strategic command. Co-emperors, yes, but with a supreme Augustus overseeing both. Think of it as a federal system, centuries before America. Third, and most critically, economic transformation. Theodosius redirects resources from endless civil wars into infrastructure. Roads, aqueducts, fortifications. The grain supply from North Africa is secured with a permanent naval presence. By the time Theodosius finally dies in 405, he's left behind something Rome hadn't seen in decades: stability. And from stability comes Renaissance. Now we arrive at what should have been the Dark Ages. In our timeline, Europe fractured into squabbling Germanic kingdoms. Knowledge was lost. Literacy plummeted. The light of classical civilization dimmed to almost nothing. But in our alternate Rome, the exact opposite occurs. By 500 AD, the Roman Empire controls everything from Britain to Mesopotamia, from the Rhine to the Sahara. Latin remains the universal language of administration, trade, and scholarship. Roman law, the Codex Justinianus, but implemented a century earlier, standardizes legal systems across 3 continents. Christianity has become the state religion, yes, but the church is subordinate to imperial authority. There's no pope crowning emperors because there's no need. The emperor is the supreme spiritual and temporal authority. Think Byzantine Caesaropapism, but extended across the entire Mediterranean. The university system that wouldn't emerge until the 12th century in our timeline. Here, It blooms in the 6th century. The Library of Alexandria never burns. Roman engineering continues to advance. By 550 AD, they've developed mechanical printing presses, almost a millennium before Gutenberg. But here's where our alternate timeline faces its greatest test. In the 630s, just as in our history, Islam explodes out of the Arabian Peninsula. Muhammad's successors lead armies that conquered the Persian Empire and tore away Rome's Middle Eastern provinces in our timeline. But what happens when they encounter not a weakened, divided Roman world, but a united imperial juggernaut? The initial Islamic expansion still occurs. Religious and military zeal knows no boundaries. But when Arab armies reach Roman Syria, they don't find scattered provincial militias. They find hardened legions backed by sophisticated logistics and fortress networks. The Battle of Yarmouk, which in our timeline was a catastrophic Roman defeat in 636, becomes a grinding stalemate. The frontier stabilizes along the Syrian desert. Now here's the fascinating part. Instead of total warfare, practical minds prevail. The Romans, remember, have always been synthesizers, absorbers of other cultures. Within a generation, a complex relationship emerges. Trade, cultural exchange, Roman merchants in Damascus, Arab scholars in Alexandria, Islamic mathematics and astronomy flow into Roman universities. Roman medicine and engineering flow south. Two civilizations locked in competition but also cross-pollination. By the year 1000, the Roman Empire looks nothing like the classical civilization of Augustus. But it hasn't fallen. It's evolved. The population centers have shifted. Constantinople remains the jewel of the East, yes, but Rome itself has transformed into a megacity of over 2 million people, the largest urban center in the world. Think ancient Roman engineering combined with centuries of continuous development. Multi-story apartment blocks with running water. Public libraries in every district. A sewer system that won't be matched until the 19th century. But here's what really changes history. The Industrial Revolution begins in 1100 AD, not 1760. Why? Because Roman engineering never stopped advancing. Water mills become more sophisticated. Metallurgy improves continuously without the setback of medieval European fragmentation. By 1150, the first steam engines are pumping water from mines in Britannia. Textile factories in Milan. And here's the crucial difference from our timeline's Industrial Revolution. It's not driven by colonial exploitation. There are no colonies. There's only the empire, continuously expanding economic complexity within stable borders. So what does the world look like in our alternate timeline? Let's fast forward to the equivalent of our modern era. First, language. There's no English, French, or Spanish as we know them. Instead, Latin evolved into a family of regional dialects, but they're mutually intelligible, like Mandarin and Cantonese. A citizen in Londinium can understand someone from Alexandria with effort. Second, religion. Christianity exists, but it never fragmented into Catholicism, Orthodoxy, and Protestantism. The imperial church is unified, reforming continuously from within rather than splintering. The Pope never became a temporal power because that role was always held by the emperor. Third, politics. Representative democracy emerges earlier, around 1300 AD, because Roman traditions of senatorial governance never completely died. By 1500, the empire has evolved into a constitutional system, with an elected Senate holding real power and emperors serving largely ceremonial roles. Fourth, and perhaps most strangely, there's no United States of America as we know it. When Roman explorers reached the Americas in the 1350s, using navigation technology developed through continuous advancement, they established provinces, not colonies. The indigenous peoples face similar catastrophes from disease, tragically. But the political integration follows Roman models of incorporation rather than European colonial extraction. Let's talk about the technological implications. In our timeline, the scientific revolution began in the 17th century, built on recovering classical knowledge that had been lost for 1,000 years. But in unbroken Rome, that knowledge never disappeared. Greek mathematics, Roman engineering, and Islamic scholarship all compound continuously. By 1400, Roman scientists have working telescopes. By 1500, they understand heliocentrism, not as a controversial theory, but as established fact taught in every university. The printing press, invented in 550, means literacy rates hit 60% by 1200, compared to under 10% in medieval Europe. By 1600, they've developed electric batteries. The laws of motion are codified in 1650. The first railroad opens between Rome and Milan in 1720. Vaccines arrive in 1750. By the modern era, this world's technology isn't necessarily more advanced than ours, but it developed more smoothly without the catastrophic setbacks of the Dark Ages. No World War I or II, because there were no rival nation-states in Europe to begin with. The great conflicts were civil wars within the empire, brutal, yes, but geographically contained. The atomic bomb might exist, but it was developed in a more stable, unified research environment. Space exploration began earlier, but proceeded more cautiously. But we need to ask the uncomfortable questions. Would this eternal Rome be better or merely different? Empires, by their nature, require hierarchy, require subordination. In our timeline, the fall of Rome, catastrophic as it was, eventually led to the European Enlightenment, to ideas of individual liberty, to the notion that people could govern themselves. In eternal Rome, those ideas might emerge much more slowly, or not at all. Consider, a civilization that never fell would also never fully question its own legitimacy. The Roman class system, patricians and plebeians, citizens and subjects, might persist for millennia, adapted but never abolished. Slavery would likely last longer than it did in our timeline. Women's rights might advance more slowly without the social disruptions that, paradoxically, opened opportunities in collapsing civilizations. And then there's cultural diversity, or the lack thereof. In our timeline, the fall of Rome allowed 1,000 flowers to bloom. Germanic, Celtic, Slavic, and Norse cultures developed their own rich traditions. In unbroken Rome, much of that diversity would be homogenized, assimilated, lost. The world would be more orderly, more technologically advanced, more stable, but also more uniform, more controlled. The question becomes, what price stability? Here's something fascinating to consider. How would information flow in eternal Rome? In our timeline, the internet emerged from decentralized networks in the late 20th century, built partly on fear of centralized systems being vulnerable to nuclear attack. But in a world with a single, stable empire spanning continents, the Roman approach to communication was always about roads and infrastructure. In our alternate timeline, they would have developed something like the internet far earlier, but it would look very different. Imagine a network that emerged not from military or academic initiatives, but from imperial postal and administrative systems. By 1800, electromagnetic telegraphs connecting every province. By 1900, a centralized data network, let's call it the imperial network, accessible through terminals in every city. But here's the crucial difference. It would be designed from the ground up with centralized control. No chaotic, freewheeling World Wide Web. Instead, an organized index system where information flows through official channels. More efficient, yes, but also more controlled. Social media exists, but it's tied to citizen registration. Anonymous speech is possible, but traceable. Privacy exists as a privilege granted by law, not as a technical default. The technological capability might match our internet, but the architecture reflects Roman values: order, hierarchy, identification. Eventually, even eternal Rome would have to face the question that destroyed every empire in our timeline: borders. How far can one political entity expand before it becomes ungovernable? In our alternate history, Rome learned this lesson early. After the Islamic expansion stabilized the southern frontier in the 7th century, imperial policy shifted from conquest to consolidation. The borders that formed became permanent, not through walls like Hadrian's, but through something more sophisticated: graduated sovereignty. Here's how it worked. The inner provinces, Italia, Greece, Asia Minor, maintained direct imperial administration. The middle tier, Gaul, Hispania, Egypt, had increasing autonomy, functioning almost like dominions. The outer tier, Britannia, Dacia, Mauritania, operated as federated territories with their own local governance, but imperial oversight on military and foreign affairs. This three-tier system allowed the empire to scale beyond what should have been possible. By 1200 AD, it encompassed roughly the same territory as the historical Roman Empire at its height, but governed it far more efficiently. And here's the key: when Roman explorers reached the Americas, they didn't try to integrate it directly. Instead, they established separate American provinces with their own administrative structures, linked to Rome through trade and military alliance, but largely self-governing. The empire learned to be flexible, to bend rather than break. But perhaps the most profound question about eternal Rome isn't political or technological. It's cultural. What art would this civilization create? In our timeline, the Renaissance occurred because European scholars rediscovered lost classical knowledge. But what happens when that knowledge is never lost? When artistic and intellectual traditions flow continuously from 100 BC to the present day? You wouldn't have a Renaissance because you wouldn't need one. Classical sculpture wouldn't be something to rediscover. It would simply evolve continuously. By the year 1500, Roman sculptors would be producing works of stunning realism, centuries of accumulated technique behind every chisel strike. Architecture would advance in an unbroken line from the Pantheon to what? Structures we can barely imagine, combining Roman grandeur with engineering knowledge accumulated over 2 millennia. Literature would be written in evolved Latin, a language with the vocabulary to discuss quantum mechanics in the same grammatical structures Cicero used. And music, here's something beautiful. In our timeline, European musical notation developed in medieval monasteries. In eternal Rome, it would have emerged from theatrical traditions, creating a completely different musical evolution. By the modern era, Roman symphonies would sound utterly alien to our ears. Different scales, different structures, different instruments. We can't even imagine what they'd sound like, because they'd be built on 2,000 years of continuous development along a path we never took. So we've walked through this alternate timeline, an empire that never fell, that evolved, transformed, but endured. And now you might be thinking, this is all fascinating speculation, but what does it tell us about our actual history? Here's the thing: Rome never really fell, not completely. The Eastern Roman Empire, what we call Byzantium, survived until 1453. That's another 1,000 years. The Holy Roman Empire, however different from Rome itself, claimed that legacy until 1806. The Catholic Church maintained Roman administrative structures, Latin language, and legal concepts. And in 1,000 ways, from our alphabet to our calendar to our legal systems to the very concept of a republic, we are living in Rome's shadow. Every dome on every government building, every concept of citizenship. Every time you see the letters SPQR or an eagle as a symbol of power. The Roman Empire didn't end in 476. It fragmented, transformed, and embedded itself into the DNA of Western civilization so thoroughly that we can't separate it out. Our alternate history isn't really alternate at all. It's just more obvious, more direct. Because here's the uncomfortable truth: we already live in the world Rome made. We just don't recognize it, because the transformation took centuries instead of being continuous. I'll leave you with this thought. Every civilization believes it will last forever. Rome certainly did, the eternal city, the empire without end. And in a sense, they were right, because empires don't die, they transform. The question isn't whether Rome fell. The question is whether it ever stopped falling, or if we're still living through that fall right now in slow motion across centuries. Our nations, our languages, our laws, all fragments of an imperial structure that shattered but never quite disappeared. Maybe the real alternate history is the one where Rome actually ended cleanly in 476, where something genuinely new could begin. But in your timeline, Rome is still here. It's in the Senate and the Capitol. It's in London and Paris and Moscow. It's in every road that leads somewhere, in every aqueduct principle that delivers water to your home, in every legal precedent that shapes your rights. So ask yourself, if Rome never fell in our alternate timeline, how do you know it fell in yours? The empire is dead. Long live the empire. And perhaps 2,000 years from now, our descendants will wonder what the world would look like if the American empire had never fallen. But that's a story for another time. Thanks for walking through history with me. Now go look at your world with different eyes and see the marble columns holding up the sky.